take us back to the fall of 2014. She was sitting in her dorm room, absolutely stunned because she looked at her bank statement, and it had $1.50 in it. And it's a pivotal moment in her life. And Mills, can you take us right back there and share how this whole thing started?
Sure. So what really prompted me to look at my bank account in the first place was to see what I could afford at dinner that night. My roommates and I wanted to go grab something to eat. And I thought to myself, well, let me see what I can actually afford. And the feeling I had when I saw my $1.50 in my bank account it was like my stomach had dropped, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't know, number one, how I got there, and number two, how to get out of it and make sure it never happened again.
It's a vulnerable place, so you have to admit that you need help. It's impossible to receive help for anybody in anything, whether it's fitness or physical or mental. You need to realize it first before you can then start to take steps. So that's really like a key moment where you did say, I gotta do something here.
That was really what started the trajectory of my financial journey. And at that point in time, I decided I was no longer going to let ignorance be an excuse. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew regardless of what career path I chose, I was going to have to deal with money. So I might as well learn about it, right?
2 years, she paid down $25,000 in debt. And she's helping people achieve financial freedom. She's done it herself. She's qualified. Mills is dropping gold here. Show your nails, by the way. I don't know if they're gold or yellow, but
they're yellow, doing something different and funky, but typing is not,
oh, man.
not easy.
Our guest today is ready to deliver a masterclass on cash. Everyone tuning in will benefit from this interview because there's a 100% chance that you fall into one of these buckets. Either you want to get your money right, you need to get your money right, or your money is flowing and you want to keep it growing. Welcome to the show, budget planning expert, the founder of Mills Knows Bills, Amelia Mills Bender.
Hey, Mike. Thanks so much for having me today. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, it's an honor having you. She's rocking the Money Mills Knows Bills shirt, which I love. I got to get one of those. She comes with a giant smile. If you guys are listening to this and not watching this, you're kind of missing out. I think you should pause it and just go to the YouTube version and start watching this because Mills she's got an energy. She's a ball of energy. She's just a ton of knowledge. And what's really cool is she's not like one of these, I hate to say this, but Poindexter financial planners that's going to come to you and bore you with numbers and figures and draw, triangles on a classroom board and just have you go, what the heck are you talking? She's very real. And here's the deal. She's real because she really dealt with this. She went through this herself. This was something that she had to get right? She was hit with reality. She had no choice but to get this right, and she made a business out of it. So what I'm going to do, Mills, I'm going to bring you on here. I want to let everybody know that they could follow you on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. All the links are clickable. If you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, go to the show notes, click on the links, and you can tune into Mills because she's given free on her social. She's always giving these really cool lessons. I know I'm tuning in and learning a lot. But here's where I'm going to have Mills pick up the story. She's going to take us back to the fall of 2014. She was sitting in her dorm room, absolutely stunned because she looked at her bank statement, and it had $1.50 in it. And it's a pivotal moment in her life. And Mills, can you take us right back there and share how this whole thing started?
Sure. So what really prompted me to look at my bank account in the first place was to see what I could afford at dinner that night. My roommates and I wanted to go grab something to eat. And I thought to myself, well, let me see what I can actually afford. And the feeling I had when I saw my $1.50 in my bank account it was like my stomach had dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, number one, how I got there, and number two, how to get out of it and make sure it never happened again. So as I had these feelings coming to me, I was overwhelmed with a plethora of questions. And what really bothered me and overwhelmed me the most, though, was, sure, I'm asking myself all these questions about topics that I do know, but what about what I don't know? Right? There's a lot to be learned. And
It's a
At that
vulnerable place, so you have to admit
point,
that you need help. It's
right.
impossible to receive help for anybody in anything, whether it's fitness or physical or mental. You need to realize it first before you can then start to take steps. So that's really like a key moment where you did say, I got to do something here different,
Yeah,
because if I do the same results will follow, right?
absolutely. And as you mentioned, that was my pivotal moment. That was really what started the trajectory of my financial journey. And at that point in time, I decided I was no longer going to let ignorance be an excuse.
Hmm.
As difficult as it was going to be, was going to study finance instead, specifically focus on personal finance, pour myself into learning numbers, because at that point in time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew regardless of what career path I chose, I was going to have to deal with money. So I
Yeah.
might as well learn about it.
Yeah.
Right. And it was really like facing my fears head on. And I grew a lot from it. It was painful emotionally at times. But as you said, along the way, I realized that the world of finance is difficult for two reasons. Number
Hmm.
one, we're not really taught this information in school. So we don't really know where to start. And number two, as we are starting to learn the information, we come to two different realizations. The first one is there's a lot of information out there, and I really don't know how to put it all together to make one puzzle piece.
Hmm.
And the second one is half the time there's all these made up words. There's jargon that I don't understand, and that keeps me from learning at the rate that I want to learn.
Right.
So those were some things that I've unpacked over the past 6.5, almost 7 years now.
I think there's people, they could be listening. I'm 35. I'm willing to admit that. There's 50-year-olds listening. There's 60-year-olds that are going, what am I going to do when I grow up? When am I going to figure this money game out? So it's not only the 18-year-old or the 22-year-old college grad that's not like dealt with hundreds of thousands of student loans. It's not only those situations, the $1.50 in your account. Anyone could really come at this with an open mind and learn from it. That's why I said in the beginning, either you need it, you want it, or you have it and you want more of it, right? So those are like the buckets that we're in. Here's the other part of this that I love. So not only did you get that right, figuring out how to climb back from $1.50, but you then paid off $25,000 of debt in 2 years, which is incredible for anybody. Can you then actually take that experience, which I love even more, and turn it into a business. And anyone who's listening to this, think about in your life how you can help people do something that you figured out yourself, like unlocking that thing that people come to you for help. Now, not everybody listening to this may want to become an entrepreneur or start their own business, but if that's something that you think you want to do, I would kind of reverse engineer it from that gift that you have. In this case, Mills created this gift because she did it herself, and then people were like, hey, can you help me figure that out? 2 years, she paid down $25,000 in debt, and she's helping people achieve financial freedom. She's done it herself. She's qualified. What is your definition of financial freedom?
So for me, my version is not having to look at my bank account every time I need to make a purchase. Because after that $1.50 incident, I found myself checking my bank account before any time I swiped my debit card. I mean, anytime, whether it was $4 at McDonald's or $50 at the grocery store. I always checked it before because I was almost compulsive of making sure that I didn't catch myself with that low of a balance again.
Yeah.
And luckily, I've been able to experience that over the past couple years and not have to check my bank account every single time I make a purchase. But it's always in the back of my mind. There's a little bit of mindset with it, a little bit of trauma, PTSD, whatever you want to call it. But to me, that's what financial freedom looks like. And then secondly, because that's almost in the negative, I would say in a positive, financial freedom looks like being able to take vacations as often as I want and not be in debt for them. Being able to retire at 65 and not worry about covering my expenses. It looks like being financially independent from working and only working because I want to, not because I have to.
Yeah, I agree. I see it exactly like you articulated it extremely well there. I agree. It's that, it's 75%. I don't know what the number is now after COVID and the pandemic, but I know going into this, I've read a lot of entrepreneurial and business books, and a couple that stick out are like 10X Rule by Grant Cardone and different things I've learned from him. But, he talks about not being average, right? Being obsessed with the thing that you're doing and then taking it to the highest level, and having a growth mindset, which I'm going to set up for you here in a second. But, what I learned is that 75% of Americans actually live paycheck to paycheck. So it's not only like a struggling college student or entrepreneur or single parent. 75%, 3 out of 4 have, maybe a couple $100 extra after paying groceries. It's not like they have 10 grand, 20 grand, 25 grand, and they can start focusing on like next year's plans to Disney and stuff. A lot of people do still do Disney, but it's at some kind of additional debt that they're adding to their current situation, like credit cards or whatever. And I think it's amazing because you need to live life. Like everybody, if you're just totally turtled up and staying at home and penny pinching, but you're not living, that I believe is a problem. And then the opposite problem is just not having a game plan and just assuming it's going to correct itself. You got to be somewhere in between. You got to have a plan, but you also have to live and have fun. So the way I want to set that up for you is talking, and it resonates with me. We're talking about a growth mindset, right? The way I identify that is like rather than only playing defense, like we were talking about, being like too tight and focusing on the penny pitching or saving every crumb of a sandwich, stacking leftovers in the fridge, right? Like playing it too safe. The emphasis then becomes on playing offense, making more money, gaining an abundance of money, food, resources, right? So what are your thoughts on operating, like the offense versus defense? And it's funny, I actually use those terms because off camera we were talking about calling audibles at the line of scrimmage. And you're like, yeah, I like college football. So let's talk a little football terms here. Offense, defense. How do you balance that?
So first, I take a look at someone's financial goals. If that's being debt-free, okay, by when do you want to be debt-free? If you want to buy a house, by when do you want to have that down payment? A lot of times people get stuck with their financial goals because they see the long-term play, but they don't know the steps to take right now to get there. If you want to have a $50,000 down payment for a house, if you've never saved even $1,000 before, that's a huge amount. I mean, that's $50K is a huge amount for anybody, but being able to break that down into bite-sized pieces on a month-to-month basis, it becomes so much more attainable. Yeah. So first and foremost, we look at their financial goals, and then we look at their mandatory expenses. Mandatory expenses are things like living and debt expenses that you will have to pay regardless if you lose your job, for example, rent, groceries. It doesn't include things like Netflix or Amazon Prime membership or Audible or things like that. As much as we love those items, we could go without them if we had to for some time.
They're in the nice to have bucket.
They're in the nice to have bucket, exactly. Yeah. So once you have subtracted all of your mandatory expenses from your income on a monthly basis, you're left over with what's called your discretionary income. And that's money that you can literally spend at your discretion. So once you have all of your financial goals listed and you have your discretionary income amount, you then prioritize those financial goals and say, all right, well, if I need to take 500 for this goal, 200 for this goal, and then 100 for the last goal, you then prioritize how you're spending that discretionary income to make sure that you meet your highest priority first. I always like to say that a budget is a monetary reflection of your priorities. Where you spend your money is your priority. So if most of your money is on dining out, that's where your priority is.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's really good. That's one of those things where, like, people always talk about facts, right? It's factual. Well, it's kind of like the truth lies in the facts. Like you got Netflix, you got dinner out 4 or 5 times out of 7. This, that, and the other thing, whatever your, maybe an entertainment budget, or some people like to have wine at the end of a night. Nothing wrong with that, but that's a costly habit to, sip on some wine and enjoy things. Some guys come home from a long day at work. They like to have a cold, a cold brew. Nothing wrong with that either, but there's cost behind that. Like every, six pack is what, $7-8, whatever it might be. So you add that up. There's not too many people, smoking these days as it's come out, obviously, over the last 50 years of the health issues that come along with it. So I feel like that the numbers are down there, but that's still a habit. That's what, thousands and thousands of dollars a year for that. So we're not even, you and I are definitely not judging people. I wouldn't have you on the show over here if we're coming on just being judgmental of people's lifestyles. We're simply saying, like, I like how you said that, your priorities, right? So what you spend money on are showing you what your discretionary income is or what your habits are. Something I wanted to get out too, based on what you said earlier, is how people kind of struggle to attack this and tackle it. And because I think it's like overwhelming, like you're saying, like when you get into finances, there's big words, there's theories, there's things you haven't done before. Saving 50 grand when you haven't saved 500, that's like a tall task for anybody. And then you're kind of asking someone to do it for the first time without little knowledge of how to do it. So people can say, I'm going to do it, and kind of separate themselves from it. And I think it's understandable. It's like anything, if you ask someone to do some kind of crazy physical activity and they haven't had that kind of lifestyle, chances are they're not going to move forward in it. But if you ask them to take little steps each day and put some kind of foundational goals in place, maybe do, 10 push-ups to start instead of a whole 3-hour marathon, right? You got a better chance at hitting those little goals. And then all of a sudden you can say, hey, you've been saving $25 a week. You weren't able to do that before. And then all of a sudden you see them in a year and they're saving like $250 a week or something crazy that they wouldn't have been able to get there without your foundational setup around them. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that we do talk some basics too, and you've already been hitting on that. So someone's tuning in right now. They're excited that you're here. You're doing, like I said, setting up a masterclass for cash. What are 3 things that people can start doing right now? Like they're done with listening to this podcast, and they can do 3 things that are going to help them set up, for the next 5 to 10 years financially. What would you say like the first 3 things they need to get right are?
So a lot of people don't know where to start, right? There's a lot of information. They don't know where to begin. Everything, and I literally mean everything in your finances, boils down to a budget. Whether you are a W-2 income earner, variable income earner, self-employed, everything boils down to your budget. You want to buy a house? How much do you need to set aside each month? You want to dine out? How much can you afford each month? You want to retire? How much expenses do you need to cover in retirement? Everything boils down to your budget. So the first thing you can do is download my free budget setting tool on my website. It's free because I think everybody needs it.
And the website, guys, I think I left it off earlier. I don't know how I did it. millsknowsbills.com, right?
Yep, that's it. And it'll be available at the top of the page as soon as you get there. You download it and you just input your information. It's nothing scary. You don't need to know math. You don't need to know how a budget works. You literally put your information in, and there's a tutorial video to walk you through it. By the end of, I'd say no more than 2 hours, you will have a budget set and you will know how your money is operating.
You mean you don't fill out the information, then you show up at their door like, okay, we're going to figure out where your money's going. Okay, how much money can you give me today to turn it into? Exactly. Slow down.
Slow down a little bit, but everything is organized, and it's an easy way to look at everything all at once. It brings up questions that you might not have considered before, like an emergency fund or saving for retirement, things like that will get you thinking about all the other important basics that you want to be working towards. Right? The second thing I would say is have an emergency fund. An emergency fund is not a one size fits all. Emergency funds are 3 to 9 months worth of your mandatory expenses. And that's your living and debt expenses combined. Choosing between 3 to 9 months really depends on you, your personality, what you do, right? I personally, when I was first starting my financial journey, had a goal of 4.5 months. I don't know why I chose 4.5. It just sounded great. But
But
when
it
an
worked
emergency,
for you. The most important thing is it worked for you. Like
right,
I'm a father of I have a young daughter. She's 6 years old. So my needs are going to be different than I have a friend who has 8 kids. His
oh,
emergency fund is going to be like someone's life savings, right? So,
right,
um, so it's all different. It's relative to your situation. Some people have every streaming app. Some people only have Netflix, right? So, and that's not really an emergency, but I'll let you speak to it. But I get what you're saying where you knew in your situation like 4 or 5 months worth of what you needed to live on.
mhm,
If you had that saved, that'll allow you, if it was a career change or whatever, if you moved, that you would have those emergency funds to be able to still maintain close to your everyday lifestyle and
absolutely.
then continue moving forward where you wouldn't have like a meltdown situation. I've been in those before, by the way, so I know
Oh,
it.
I mean, it's
But
not it's not. But I mean, the reason why you don't want to sleep on an emergency fund is for
mhm.
two main reasons. Number one, if you have an unexpected expense come up and you don't have cash on hand to cover that expense, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Most of us are going to put it on a credit card. And if you've been trying to pay off debt, that's the most infuriating experience ever
Mhm.
because you just hop back on that
It
hamster wheel.
feels like you are at the bottom of the ocean. You swim to the surface, and then someone just brings you down halfway again. You're like, "Oh, we're
Exactly.
doing this again."
We're
Some
doing
people
it
don't even have the luxury of using credit cards once they get in a horrible situation
again.
as well.
Right.
So
And that's another
that's
scary thing.
that's not something to rely on. Yeah.
Mhm.
What would the third bullet
Well, the
point be?
second the second reason for an emergency fund is if you lose your job and you have 3 months of an
Hmm.
emergency fund on hand, you've bought yourself 3 months of time to find out another job or pivot, figure out a different option.
And even
Right.
accumulate. Like if you do land a great job right out of the gates, you know that setting up direct deposit or whatever takes a couple of weeks. Sometimes you don't get your first paycheck until like a month after you work, and usually then you get like two, which is always a nice feeling. You're like, oh, it's kind of got a bigger, but that takes some time, obviously, to build it up. And then if you had a lull before that payday, you know that it's going to get spent down a lot quicker because your bills have been sitting there waiting for it. And then all of a sudden, this mountain comes and the mountain goes, right? So if
Yeah,
you have the emergency fund, you can allow that mountain to not go to serving the last 3 months because those 3 months are covered. I love it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think the last step really depends on your financial situation. If you have debt, pay down your debt. Regardless if you have debt or not, you need to be investing.
Mm-hmm.
Need to be investing. Time is on your side when you invest. So by putting a little bit of money into the stock market each month, it allows it to grow a little bit more. Some amount of debt is healthy. It's called leverage. It's not
Mm-hmm.
liability, right? For example, right now, I have a mortgage and a car payment. The reason why I am holding those and paying them just the minimum balance each month or the minimum payment each month is because the cost of that interest rate is far less than what I could be earning in the stock market.
So that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense. And I also rent out that unit where I have the mortgage. So that's called leverage, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
making money off of borrowing money. So the third step, again, to reiterate, pay off debt, at
Mm-hmm.
least bad debt like credit cards and things like that, and then repurpose that monthly payment into investments. It's
Yeah.
already money that you're used to not having in your pocket. Might as well pay your future self.
Yeah, and just to make sure I understand what you're saying about making payments, that's a situation where if you paid it all off, you're basically taking your money that can be working for you behind the scenes and you're
Mhm,
putting it somewhere that's just stuck. It paid something off. Where
mhm,
that money, let's make it really easy. It's a $10,000 loan and you pay $1,000 each month or something, right? Or 800, so that would be for the year. So 800 a month times 12 is 10 grand, isn't it? I believe.
mhm.
So if you paid
Eight.
800 a month, whatever,
Mhm.
um, and only paid 800 a month, you're going to have all that other money freed up that you can be investing in different areas, opposed to just saying, I got this $10,000 loan, I have 10 grand, I'm just going to pay it off. Well,
Mhm.
now all that money that could have been you could have been compounding is kind of gone, right? So unless that had like a crazy interest rate, like you're saying, of like 25%, then you'd be like, I'm getting crushed. getting killed, and this 10 grand is going to end up being like whatever it would be. I don't know, 50,000 or something if you waited and paid it down monthly.
Let's use this example. So credit cards on average are 25% rate of return. The stock market over the past 100 years has earned an average 10% rate of return. Guaranteeing a 25% return through investments is very difficult.
Yeah, it's like
the only way that you can guarantee that type of return in your pocket is by paying off that credit card that's costing you 25%. Once you have freed up that cash flow, that cash outflow that's going towards that credit card, invest it and get that 10% rate of return year over year. Of course, there's going to be high highs, low lows. It's going to be cyclical. And we can talk about investments on another day. But the point is, anything that is costing you an exorbitant amount of interest, to guarantee that type of return, pay it off. Put that money back in your pocket and then invest it so it can work for you rather than you working for it.
You have to imagine it like the money that you'd be losing and all the interest is what you're essentially gaining now that you wouldn't have had access to if you only paid it down and paid the interest on it. It's like extra money you could have been saving essentially. And I think when you think of it that way, it puts it into a different perspective of like, that's money I didn't have. I'm unlocking. It's not free money. It's your money, but you're unlocking it opposed to giving it away for free.
Right.
Like, and I'll just give it to this lender.
Right. And that's why I actually hold my mortgage and car payment. I don't expedite the payoff of those because the interest rates are 2 and 5%.
Yeah.
So if I were to take an extra, let's just say $100 a month and put it towards the debt with a higher interest rate and pay that off sooner, yeah, sure, I'm putting 5% back in my pocket sooner, or I could take that $100 and invest it in the stock market and get 10%.
Yeah. Man, Mills is dropping gold here. Show your nails, by the way. I don't know if they're gold or yellow, but
they're yellow.
All right,
and I felt like doing something different and funky, but typing is not, not easy.
Man, she's got it. Mills knows bills. Hey, here's what we're gonna do. I know we're like way late, but that's the cool part about being your own producer is that you can be way late to a break, and there's nobody screaming at me. But we will take a quick sponsorship timeout. When we return, Mills is going to continue to drop some gold, so do not go anywhere. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, we're back in action with Mills Bender. You guys can connect with her directly on social to get more money tips and also visit her website, millsknowsbills.com, and Mills is spelled M-I-L-L-S, knowsbills.com, to learn how to master your money. All the links are clickable in the show notes. Look at that, smooth segue into mastering your money. You have a course, you have a program on your website called Master Your Money. Let's talk about it.
I do. So with the program, it's 90 days. And within that program, clients walk away with 3 different results. No longer living paycheck to paycheck, paying off debt twice as fast, and being able to reach their financial goals. And those 3 results are obtained by learning a skill set, which is budgeting and cash flow management. And I know I'm the budgeting queen, but I'll be the first to say that budgeting is not glamorous. Let's be honest. Yeah. Unless you love Excel or you're a finance nerd like myself, it's not something that is exciting for everybody. And I get that. So the point of the program is to teach you the skill just so you understand it and then automate it as much as possible. So it becomes something that's smooth and something that you don't have to worry about, and it works for you. So you're on track to getting those 3 results easily.
Mm-hmm. Something that I learned from, I'm going to call him a virtual mentor, because it's not like I call him up. Hey, Ed, how you doing? I talk about Ed Milet a lot. He's a huge inspiration for me in getting started as an entrepreneur, and his book, Max Out, is fantastic, and I recommend any business or entrepreneur or even salesperson to read that book. But there's something that he talks about, too, is like totally understanding down to the decimal point of what you're actually looking to achieve or what you need. Because your brain doesn't solve for, I need 50 grand. It doesn't know that. It doesn't figure it out. But if you say, I need $347 at the end of each week, you can then go and solve for that. And this is a mistake I make. I'm too general with like a goal. Like I want to make, $10K a month in this, field or whatever, and break down your different income flows and all this stuff, right? But what is 10K a month, right? So like what part of the business is driving that? What's the $% for each client, right? Or dollar amount. And so how important is actually, when you're talking about budgeting, getting it right down, maybe not to the penny, but let's say to the dollar, right? That's huge.
It is. I can tell you how many people I talk to are like, I don't need to include that subscription. It's only $1.99 a month. But then we go through there, and then they have, 3 of those $1.99 a month, and it adds up. And then they have $5 things that they don't view as important. It does stack up.
I have these right here, right? My little 1-a-day Nature's Veil. What is this? Naturello. Look at that free sponsorship. I can't even say the name of the product, so that I don't think they're gonna be too happy. But it's a vegetarian multivitamin for men, right? And I know this is like maybe $20, $24, whatever it is. And so right there, if you're paying $2 a month, right, for something you don't even use or know you have, times 12, there's your 24. Like it's a bottle of these, which every time you pay, I know I buy vitamins, I'm kind of like, man, it's a $25 deal. It's not a big deal, right? But it's at least something where, and those add up every time you do it. And then, there's other supplements and stuff. There's a protein right here, my protein shake, and that thing is like $30 every time I buy it at the store. So now we're talking about $55 before we even bought fresh vegetables. Right. I spent $140 in groceries the other day just on myself for like 3 days of stuff, because it was all like healthy, gluten-free, all crazy stuff, right? So, but if I went in and not knowing what my budget was, right, or like, so I just want to make sure we get back to that point where what he was talking about is solving for a very specific amount, because our brains operate in that way where we can understand it, like everybody knows the dollar per hour that they want to earn, but then they don't put that into how, when they're spending, like kind of reverse engineering it. So yeah. So I appreciate you breaking that down. I mean, there's so many, I got notes, I got pages of notes over here. As you could see, I'm going to go back, and I always enjoy, taking some time in between recording an episode, then going back and listening to it again, because sometimes it's even something I say, like, hey, I want to be doing this. And then I catch myself like, oh, you said you're going to do that and you didn't do it yet. So then I I start things again. So I hold myself accountable through that's part of the fun of recording these, is like, you can go back now. I have, as this comes out, there's going to be over 90 episodes of content out. That's really interesting to see my own personal growth and the things I've learned on the show. It's not only for the audience. Obviously, that's the number one reason I do this, is to inspire people to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. And but it's also great because I learn. I'm the first audience member with my notepad every single time. And I knew this one was like, wow, I need a lot of help in this area, because I've been good with figuring out a way to earn money, but I've also had spending issues. And, I think it's the first important thing we talked about earlier is acknowledging it, and then setting up the processes. So we're going to segue again, bam, partially intentional. We just talked about it. The purpose of the show, right, is to inspire people to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. So if you can deliver kind of a summarized statement to our audience, what would you tell them? Someone who's kind of on the fence with, like, they have this thing in their heart and they're just not sure how to get started and do it.
One of the things that I've really been talking a lot about lately and almost feeling myself with my own business, don't wait to show up perfectly. In
Yeah.
other words, don't wait to get your finances in order when you feel like you have everything else in your life in order.
Hmm.
Don't put the pressure on yourself to nickel and dime all of your spending when it comes to starting to set a budget. A budget is a template, it's a guideline, a roadmap for you to work towards your goals. If you want to set aside $200 a month in savings and you accidentally overspend in dining out by 100, you're still setting aside $100 in savings.
Mm.
That's still progress. And I can't tell you how many people I see that I work with that, well, because I can't put aside the whole 200, I'm just going to completely give in to dining out. Like I'm a failure.
Uh-huh.
People make mistakes. We're human.
Yeah.
So, you know, tying this all up, don't put the pressure on yourself to be perfect. Your finances are always evolving. They're not static. Just make progress and continually work towards improvement. But the first step is setting that budget and being gracious with yourself and setting it.
That's incredible. I agree. Like once you have some kind of infrastructure to work on, a checks and balances system, no pun intended, but literally like have
Yeah.
something that you can look at, even if you're failing, right? That word gets, is has
Yeah.
way too much weight. Like the most successful people in the world failed more than anybody's ever tried. So failing is actually a good thing. Like you learn and you go. But if you set something in place and it's not working out and you kind of like that person feels like a failure and they're like, I'm just going to go and spend crazy like I used to because I'm not seeing any improvement. Well, even if they are not hitting their goals, like you said, the process of building something and having it, at least now they know they're failing by $40 a month or whatever
Right.
the number is. I'm making it up. But so if it's, they're off by only $40, without any system, they could be off 400, they could be over 200, they could be under 1,000, they don't even know. But if you know you're only missing the target now by 40, like Ed was talking about, now you have a number to work with, so you can start to put processes in place to hit numbers. So yeah, that would be incredible. Like, okay, I didn't save anything or I didn't save over, but
Mhm.
I'm only missing the target by so much now, where before
You weren't doing
it's better to know if you're in a bad situation. It's better to actually know what that situation is than to just, and this is my problem in the past. Whenever things went sour, I
Mhm.
kind of just only looked at offense and didn't look at defense,
Yeah.
which is not good either because it's like picture a swimming pool with thousands of holes in it. And if that's literally like your financial system, that's a great like analogy for it, right? If you don't know, if you have 3 holes, wouldn't you feel better than if you had 500 holes in your swimming pool? So how do you know? I mean, and how do you start to patch them up if you have no idea how many holes there are? So I think that's super good. This is not meant to be a curveball or anything to put you on the hot seat, but I'm really interested in your answer on this. I know we're kind of running short on time. I got a couple more questions, but this is something I really would love to hear from you. You are the author and the protagonist in your own life story. You get
Okay.
to write the ending. Okay, so imagine this. You get to write the ending. God willing, you live a long, prosperous life. You're looking back on it, you're reflecting on it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that look like?
Hmm. I would like to change change the world of financial understanding
Mm-hmm.
by getting information to students before they graduate high school. I want to be known as the person who not only sells the curriculum to high schools that can afford it, but donates the curriculum to schools that can't afford it, lower income areas. And I want to be the person that encourages and empowers others through education to take those financial steps
Mm-hmm.
towards their version of financial freedom. I want to be a speaker. I would like to be a mom one day and raise my kids in an environment that allows them to change the world and have their financial understanding. I don't want them to have $1.50 in their bank account,
Mm-hmm.
but my legacy is meant to empower others through education, all in
Mm.
all.
You're doing it. You're doing it, and it's going to continue to grow and compound, just like interest, in a good
Just
way.
just
Yeah. So I love that. I know you're going to go back, and I'll go back and listen to that as you continue to grow in your success. And success is defined in many different ways, but you're definitely doing amazing things. So I think that's awesome to see that you have the vision, and that's another thing. We're talking about vision, but just like setting those monetary goals, percentages, dollars, decimals, it's the same thing with a vision board, right? So you actually know, when talking to someone like yourself, you look at behind her, she's got this vision board mapped out. So she's going to hit her targets because she knows exactly what they are, and she articulated that in a half a second, because it's not the first time she was thinking about it, right? You could tell that Mills knows where she's going. So that's huge. You mentioned it again, and I actually had it in a mental note. I wanted to talk about kind of the school system, not to knock it, but there really is a lack of, like, even talking about a checkbook. I know kids today don't even probably know what one looks like because everything's digital. So there's still a checks and balances that needs to be learned, even if it's digital, right? So we all know, like, how to do the Pythagorean theorem by the time we're in ninth grade or whatever, and algebra, solving for x, and then you get into all kinds of crazy calculus, and it goes on and on and on, trigonometry, and on and on and on it goes. Nowhere in any of that process, right, is just having an understanding of interest and compounding and saving and budgeting and some simple things that can really help, especially knowing that kids are going off from college or from high school into college, and their debt situation is astronomical. Even for a small local college, we're talking thousands of dollars that kids don't even know how to balance $50. So I think there's a big ball dropped on that. So if you are, part of your mission is to fix that problem, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people giving you high fives, hugs, and you're going to be changing and impacting people's lives in a fantastic way. So I'm excited about what you're doing. But I had one teacher.
Yeah.
It was, I think, 10th or 11th grade that actually talked about this. I think it might have been for one class, but he just went through talking about, like, 401k, how important it is. And when someone comes into your employer in a couple of years and starts to talk to you about it, don't blow them off because they just look, like I said, a Poindexter who's trying to be like, you should save your 2% because it can turn into 4%. But actually, he gave us an understanding and, like, mapped it out. Like, if all you did was put whatever 2, 4, 6% away on an average salary, and I grew up in Buffalo, so it was like an average salary, and he figured out what that would look like, and we were all, like, surprised because we had no clue that that's how it worked. And that was just a math teacher with a heart, just saying, I want to help you kids out, But then it left there, and in college I didn't have any classes even close to that. I did all, like, media production classes and education and stuff, so I wasn't really learning much of that either. So what you're doing, I'm saying, just to remind you, fresh of breath air, take a deep breath, you're doing it. You're helping people out because it's not taught in the schools right now.
No, and for a long time, I'll be the first to admit, I almost kind of blamed the school system for my lack of understanding, because that's really what it boils down to. Financial mistakes occur due to lack of understanding around them. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my moment of when I was like, I'm not going to let ignorance be an excuse anymore, right? I stopped blaming my problems on other people. But over the past year, I have implemented a curriculum into 2 different schools and a nonprofit. And I've learned a couple different things that I actually want to share with people, so that way they almost have a little bit more understanding about the situation. Yeah. Number 1, creating new curriculum is really hard. It really is. It's not easy. Number 2, the people who are most qualified to create this type of curriculum, it's not worth their time. Mm-hmm. It's not worth the money. I'm not doing this because I'm making a ton of money off of it. In fact, I've donated it up to this point. Yeah. It's not a moneymaker for me. Third, even if you implement this type of curriculum in schools, well, then how does that help the schools with their ratings, right? There's a lot more steps that go into it than just saying you should teach this in schools. Mm-hmm. It's really not that easy. But lastly, what I will say is, as I've been talking with a lot of different administrators and high school students, I'm seeing some schools start implementing this in some way. Mm-hmm. Might not be in the way that we all want, but they're making an effort.
Just like we said, they have some they're at least doing something,
Doing
and
something.
so they can improve on it. Like if you have no plan, no start, no place of start, then there's no correction. It's just not even existing. So I want to say too, like I kind of feel, it's like, oh, the school system been set up, and the schools can say, well, what about your parents, right? Well, the
Right.
thing is, not to put parents on the hook or take them off of the hook, 75%, and we're in America, which is like aren't we still the richest, quote unquote, richest or most financial
Sure.
best situation, and we're 75% struggling. So, I know parents can be responsible, and I definitely plan on learning things from you, and I'm excited to be working with you in the near future, but also set things up for my daughter, at least give her some basis, and then at least point her in the right direction. Like, that's the best thing as a parent that you can really do, in my opinion, is if you don't have the answers, at least help your children get to the answers. And even if it's been something that you've struggled with, then find, like, where's the resource, and put that resource, and your kid will start to work through it in a way that maybe you didn't experience it. So it's okay to not have all the answers, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's like, it's not a school problem, it's not a parent problem, it's kind of a collective raising a child problem. And you're providing a solution, but also it's good to see the schools doing a little bit, parents have to do a little bit. And again, if a parent is super struggling, I know most of the entrepreneurs I've interviewed or studied have come from a really horrible situation. It's crazy. Like, most of the millionaires I've either talked to or read their books or whatever, they're like, they were either poor or lost it all. A lot of times people make it and lose it, and make it and lose it. And it's crazy to see. But my point is, it's like, not every little kid is growing up with, like, mommy and daddy who's saying, here's the roadmap to success to build your portfolio. It's very rare, is my point. So again, the need for resource and information is huge. And I appreciate you being real and saying, look, a lot of times when you see someone doing this from an education standpoint, they're not making a ton of money doing it. And someone who can be, like, managing $1 million portfolios isn't going to want to come down on the level and help the college kid getting out of, working through debt, or the single parent, or the parents that have 3 kids that are trying to figure it all out. It doesn't always have to be a adverse situation, right? But a lot of people are in those situations, especially we're recording this in, I have to think about what month we're in, July of 2021, right? So this information is fantastic. I know we need to wrap up. We got a few other things we need to get to here. But I always like to say, be great and be grateful. A little swag. You're rocking your swag. I'm doing a little mic'd up swag. What are 3 things you're most grateful for?
I'm grateful for my husband. He is the most supportive, understanding man ever. I am grateful for my community of other entrepreneurs that I network with. They push me, they encourage me, they love on me. And I'm grateful for my pets. They're a great way for me to, get unconditional love. And it shows me and reminds me how to love other people unconditionally too.
Mm-hmm. We can learn a lot from the unconditional love from our pets too.
Yeah.
About how they're not judging us on a day-to-day basis, and they need very little to be content. And it's a great thing to learn from them. That's awesome. And congrats to you and your husband. And I can tell that you guys have a great thing going. I love what you're doing on social media. Again, everyone can click on that. Go to the website, Mills Knows Bills. I'm going to give you one opportunity here before we wrap up. Anything else that you'd like to add that maybe I didn't cover or that you didn't get out yet?
No, just if anyone has any questions about their finances or financial understanding in general, you can schedule a free call with me. I'm not scary, I promise. I love talking about money. And I love making sure that you feel confident about understanding it as well. So you can get that information on my Instagram. Again, it's a free 15-minute phone call. I promise it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Guys, take it. I mean, she's giving her time away for free. That's the number one resource we all have. Second or first to money is our time, right? So take her up on the offer because she can help you. She just did for close to an hour here. So thank you again, Mills, for being on the program, helping us out, helping me out, just coming with an open heart. last thing I'll say too, guys, is like she's the real deal. I did homework on this, and she's not just saying this. I have a note here. I mean, because you're not only a great earner, but you're also a generous giver. And I just want to make sure we end on letting people know that you're giving to the Einstein Academy, Brownsville Middle School. There's a program called Our Stars Project, right? Those three in particular. Can you just share your connection to those and how and like why you're giving to those three? I think that's awesome.
So all three of those are student-based organizations that have allowed me to teach them financial literacy. The two schools I was in for the entire school year, every week I zoomed in and I taught them a different topic. Our Stars, I helped their high school seniors understand finances before they went to college. And then, it's a good way for them to get prepared before taking that next step.
Yeah, that's amazing. This is awesome. And you're early on in your journey, right? I mean, like you've been doing this for a handful of years since you realized it for yourself. Was that about 5 years ago?
So I formally started Mills Knows Bills November of 2019. But
okay. It's a couple years of official, but you've even prior to that had friends and people that you were helping out. But it's amazing what you've done in 2 years. I'm looking forward to seeing the next 20. And you got a friend here in Buffalo. So I look forward to working with you and doing your program and helping you out. You have a podcast that's launching as well. I'm super excited for that.
With you, which is great. I'm excited about that too.
Guys, millsknowsbills.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Mills, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/micedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/micedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.